Hello everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel Linux World with GK. My name is Gautam Kumar and I am a senior Linux administrator. In day 2 video of Ansible 0 to Hero series, I have explained about Ansible inventory concept and this is a day 3 video of Ansible 0 to Hero series and in this video I am going to cover the Ansible configuration concepts and the content of this video will be what is the Ansible configuration? Configuration file precedence, managing settings in configuration file, configuring connections, non-SSH connection. So before starting Ansible configuration, I will tell you what is the objectives of this video. So after completing this section, you should be able to describe where the Ansible configuration files are located, how they are selected by Ansible, and edit them to apply the changes to default settings. So let's get started. What is Ansible configuration? So Ansible configuration file is the brain and heart of the Ansible, the file that governs the behavior of all interactions performed by control node. In Ansible, the default configuration file is ansible.cfg and located under /etc /ansible.cfg. Ansible choose its configuration file from one of the several possible locations on control node. So the default one is this one, etc Ansible, ansible.cfg. The Ansible package provide a base configuration file located at /etc /ansible.cfg. This file is used if no other file configuration file is found. The second is using /ansible.cfg. Ansible looks for .ansible.cfg file in user home directory. This configuration is used instead of etc ansible.cfg if it exists and if there is no ansible.cfg file in current working directory. Third is using ansible.cfg. If ansible.cfg file exists in directory in which Ansible command is executed, it is used instead of global file or user personal file. This allows administrator to create a directory structure where the different environments or projects are stored in separate directory, with each directory containing a configuration file tailored with unique set of things. The important thing here, I want to tell you that the recommended practice is to create an ansible.cfg file in a directory from which you run the Ansible commands. This directory would also contain any file used by your Ansible project, such as inventory and playbook. So under the directory where the ansible.cfg file will exist, that directory will have also these two files, inventory file and playbook. This is the most common location used for Ansible configuration file, and it is it is unusual to use /dot ansible.cfg or etc ansible.cfg file in practice. The fourth one is using ansible underscore config environment variable. You can use the different configuration file by placing them in different directory and then execute ansible commands from the appropriate directory. But this method can restrict and hard to manage as number of configuration file grow. The more flexible option is to define the location of the configuration file with ansible underscore config environment variable. When this variable is defined, Ansible uses the configuration file that the variable specifies instead of any of previously mentioned configuration files. So the next topic is configuration file precedence. So any file specified by ansible underscore config environment variable override all other configuration files. If that variable is not set, directory in which ansible command was run is then checked for ansible.cfg file. If that file is not present, user home directory is checked for ansible.cfg file. The, the global /etc /ansible.cfg file is only used if no other configuration file is found. If /etc /ansible /ansible.cfg configuration file is not present, Ansible contains default which it used. Because of multiple of location in which Ansible configuration file can be placed, it can be confusing which configuration file is used by Ansible. You can run Ansible space hyphen version command to clearly identify which version of Ansible is installed and which configuration file is used. So you can run in your system Ansible space hyphen version. So this command will provide you the Ansible version and the config file location and some other details. So now I will explain you. So let me connect my mm, lab machine. So yeah, this is my control node VM1 and Ansible. Yeah, you can see Ansible version is 2.12.10 and configuration file is etc ansible.cfg. So let me tell you the current directory. My current working directory is this one and let me show the content. So there is no configuration file and due to this the config file is showing default configuration file which comes under Ansible installation package. And now I will move to directory Ansible that I have created and I have also created ansible.cfg. Now if I will run Ansible space version, you can see the configuration file has been changed. /home /background /ansible /ansible.cfg. So as I have explained, the third method using ansible.cfg. If ansible.cfg file exists in a directory in which you will run the command, then the Ansible will tell you the configuration file location as your current location. Next, I will explain you regarding Ansible underscore config variables. Yeah. So yeah. Now I will define Ansible underscore config variable. So let me export, sorry, and yeah, let me check variable value you can see. So I have now defined uh, Ansible underscore config variable. Now if I run Ansible space hyphen version, yeah, you can see the config file is /root /ansible.2 /ansible 1.cfg. Ansible.cfg. So here you can see if you define Ansible underscore config variable, so Ansible will consider top priority for this, and you can see you can run Ansible space version command from anywhere, but you will get the config file that you have defined under the variables. So I hope now you have a clear understanding on Ansible configuration. Now I will move to the next section of this video, that is managing setting in configuration file. So friends, Ansible configuration file consists several sections with each section containing setting defined as a key value pair. The section title are enclosed in a square bracket for basic operation using use the following two sections. So it means under the Ansible configuration file, there are many sections, but the basic sections are two, defaults and privilege escalation. And we define the configuration section under a square bracket, as you can see here. So, for example, following is a typical ansible.cfg file, you can see here the two sections are available. The default section, first section, and the second section is privilege explanation section. So now I will explain this configuration files. The first one is under the default section. The first one is inventory. I specify the path to the inventory. The second is remote user. The name of the user to log in as a managed host, the name of the user to log in as or managed host. If not specified, the current user's name is used. The third is ask password. Whether or not to prompt for SSH password can be false if using SSH public key authentication. The next is become. Become comes under privilege explanation section and it's defined whether to automatically switch user or manage host or not. The next is become method. How to switch user. And here you can see the default value is sudo. With help of sudo, you can switch user. The next is become user. The user to switch to or manage host, typically root or which is default. And the last one is become underscore ask underscore password, whether to prompt for password for your become method default to false. The next is configuring connection. Ansible needs to know how to communicate with its managed host. One of the most common reasons to change the configuration file is to control which method and users Ansible use to administer the managed host. Some of information needed includes the first is the location of the inventory file that lists the managed host and host group. The next is which connection protocol to use to communicate with managers by default SSL and whether or not a non-standard network port is needed to connect the server. Next is which remote user to use or manage host. This could be root or it could be unprivileged user. Next is if the remote user is unprivileged, Ansible needs to know if it should try to explain the privilege to root and how to do it. I have already explained all these things in this table. So what is the meaning of? Like how to become a root user from non-privileged user. And the last one is here whether or not to prompt for SSH password or pseudo password to log in or gain a privilege. So inventory location. In the default sections, inventory directive can point directly to a static inventory file. You can see. Under default section, you can define the inventory path in this way. The connection setting. By default, Ansible connects to manage host using SSH protocol. The most important parameter that control how Ansible connects to manage host are set in default sections. Okay, by default, Ansible attempts to connect to manage host using the same user, the name as a local user running on Ansible commands. To specify different remote user, set remote user parameter to that username. It means by default, Ansible will try to connect to remote user using control node user. So, if you want to connect manage host using different user, you need to define here under the default section remote user with a space equal a space username. The next section is escalating privilege. For security and auditing reasons, Ansible might need to connect to remote hosts as an unprivileged user before escalating privilege to get administrative access as a root. This can be set in privilege escalation section of Ansible configuration file. To enable the privilege expression by default, set directory become true in configuration file. The become method directory, sorry, the become method directive specify how to escalate privilege. The several options are available, but default is to use sudo. Like the become user, the directive specify which user to escalate to, but default is root. If the become method mechanism choose required to user to enter the password to escalate the privilege, you can set become ask password through directive in configuration file. The following example ansible.cfg file assume that you can connect to manage host on some user using SSH key-based authentication that some user can use sudo to run a command as a root without entering the password. Yeah. So now I will show you the hands-on example. So yeah, this is my control node. Let me move to Ansible 1 folder. Under Ansible 1, we have ansible.cfg. So let me show you the content of this file. Nothing. So yeah, let me add some part here. Inventory location is current working directory. Remote user is some user. Let me change it. I got them and ask password false. Privilege explanation become true. Method sudo become user root. Ask password become ask password false. So this is my configuration file. And remote user is the username of my managed host. So I have already set SSH passwordless authentication. Let me show you. This is a managed host. SSH Gautam. Okay, one second. That I have set SSH passwordless authentication from from different user, not from root users. So let me check it from here. Yeah. You can see I can directly connect to VM2 without entering the password. So let me show you once again ansible.cfg and you can see the same content. So now I will explain Ansible or you can see if you get response ping pong means you are able to ping the remote host. Yeah. So let me show you the content of inventory. Yeah. Yeah. You can see ping pong. So you can see how we can connect to remote host using non-privileged users. So if you have not said, let me show you. I will show you one another example. So yeah, so I have not said passwordless authentication from the root user. So let me tell you what will happen. Yeah. So I will do Ansible thing or failed to connect host via SSH. So I have not set passwordless authentication. So why it is happening? Let me show you. Because I have not set passwordless authentication, so I have to set it true and also this. So yeah. Now let me run. I have to enter SSH access, then become passwords. Yeah, you can see the response form. So the concept is here very clear. If you check passwordless authentication from control node to manage host, you no need to keep this true and this, but you have if you do not set passwordless authentication, then you have to keep this true. Ask password and become ask password both. So now I will move to the next section of this video, that is the non-SSH connection. Non-SSH connection. The protocol used by Ansible to connect to manage host is set by default to a smart, and with a smart, Ansible automatically choose the best available method to connect the managed host, and typically it use SSH. If SSH is not available, it fall back to Paramiko, a Python SSH client. For example, there is a one exception to the rule that SSH is used by default if you do not have a local host in your inventory. Ansible set it implicit local host entry to allow you a run ad hoc command and playbook that target the local host. Let me show you. So there is no local host, but if I run Ansible localhost list host, you can see the localhost. So, but there is no localhost entry under inventory. So, as I have already explained, Ansible set up at implicit localhost. This a special inventory entry is not included in all or ungrouped host groups. In addition, instead of using a smart SSH connection type, Ansible connect to it using a special local connection type by default. The local connection type ignores the remote user setting and runs command directly on local system. If privilege escalation is being used, it runs sudo from the user account that runs Ansible command, not remote user. If you want to make sure that you connect to localhost using SSH connection like other managed hosts, because by default Ansible connect to localhost using local connection, not using SSH protocol. So one approach is to list your inventory. You can list localhost under inventory. What this includes it in all in ungroup groups, which you may not want. I have already explained about the concept of all in one groups in previous video. Another approach is to change the protocol used to connect to localhost. The best way to do this is to set Ansible connection host variables for localhost. To do this, in directory from which you run Ansible command, create a host variable subdirectory. So you can see. This is my current working directory, and I have already created a one subfolder host underscore vars. In this subdirectory, create a file called localhost. So let me show you. You can see I have already created localhost. And let me show you the content of the localhost. In this file, I have mentioned how to connect localhost. So I have mentioned Asma. So now Ansible will always connect to this local host using a smart protocol, not using local. Friends, here I have explained the concept of Ansible configuration and I have also shown you some hands-on. I will also share the link of this article. And in next video, I will explain Ansible ad hoc commands concept. So thanks for watching this video. Please like this video and subscribe my YouTube channel so that you can get direct notification if I upload any new video. Thank you. Thank you.